Okay, it's starting time. Good morning to everybody watching us on YouTube, LinkedIn, also Facebook, and listening to us in Clubhouse. Well, we are here once again on this Wednesday morning, September the 25th, and we have with us once again our guest Jake Nalton, who is going to talk with us about nurseries once again, but a very specific topic about nurseries. It is about nutrition in Japanese nurseries and also Hoikuens and preschools. So it is a pleasure to have you with us again, Jake. Thank you very much for joining us. And I cannot wait for this conversation actually to start
Yeah.
and to get into it because there is so much to talk about, I'm sure. And all of us, the three of us, come from different parts of the world. And I'm sure that the three of us have actually been at some point of time surprised with what nutrition means in Japanese educational system
Yes.
and how
Yeah.
it is presented to the students here. But I don't want to continue any longer. I just wanted to say to everybody who is watching us for the first time that Jake is the principal of the Milky Way International Preschool in Funabashi. And we already had a podcast with him 2 weeks ago, which you can watch on YouTube or on LinkedIn at Japan Expert Insights. So if you have a kid in preschool, or if you're thinking about sending your children into the Japanese educational system, please listen. This is for you. Okay,
Yeah.
so Jake, maybe we can start with you, and then I would like to give a shout out to our first sponsor. But just once again, could you please give us a very brief self introduction for the people who are watching us for the first time?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jake Nalton. I am the principal of Milky Way International Preschool. Have been doing so for 5 years, and I've been living here in Japan for 11 years, enjoying life here in Chiba.
Well, thank you very much for that. And all right, before we dive into this really great topic for everybody, not only for kids, but for parents and people who have children even. So I would like to say thank you very much again to our first sponsor, Kanchu.com. The company offers bilingual services in both English and Japanese to people who live in the Kantore area. So they offer buying and selling real estate services in Tokyo and Yokohama. The company also does property management and investment property. So if you want to work with them, please do contact James Howell at james@kanacho.com or connect with him on LinkedIn. He is there so that you can talk about your next project and really benefit from the way they customize their services to their customers' needs. Okay, thank you very much for this. And now we are going into straight into the topic of today, nutrition, how it is in the early Japanese education and how it is taught, what it means, and so on. Jake, it's on you
Yeah.
now.
Thank you. Being in Japan, I'm sure all three of us have experienced this. It's kind of like a culture shock, really, of one of the
Mm,
things we kind of notice about children in Japan is generally they eat much better, and there's a lot less obesity and stuff, and people live longer. And once I started working within kindergartens and preschools, before my job at Milky Way, I used to just go around to other preschools and stuff about starting about 8 years ago. And I remember just going into these schools and seeing these little kitchens and kind of being not shocked, but just a little surprised, like, wow, even in these tiny little schools, they're making their own lunches fresh every day. And it's something that I really grew to. At first, I was kind of like, "Wow, that seems like a massive, that seems like a massive, like not pain in the ass, but it takes a lot of time. It
yeah.
must be really tough to manage that." But once everyone was sat down for lunchtime and eating together, and seeing the kids eat the vegetables and finish everything without complaining, I kind of really started to respect it a lot more. And then once I came to my own school and I got involved in things like making the menu and understanding why it's so important that nutrition is taken seriously for young kids, especially like really young kids. It kind of got me excited a lot more. It's one of the most exciting parts of my job, actually. Yesterday, I went to work and the kitchen staff gave me the first draft of the menu for November because we have to make it quite early in advance to order ingredients. And it's always one of the most exciting parts to see what we're going to have each day. And then even little things like we have to manage like calorie counts, protein, sodium, all of that stuff every single day. And because growing up in England, I'm sure we've all got similar stories, but the food in my school was terrible. We had there's a famous celebrity chef, which I think the story was quite worldwide, but we have a person called Jamie Oliver who was quite famous for trying to clean up the school lunches in England. And he tried to get rid of all of these bad foods, like like processed. There was the famous food called a turkey Twizzler, which was like this kind of like ribbon of turkey meat, and apparently it was just so bad for you that they had to take it out of schools, and parents would get so angry that there was news stories of them passing hamburgers through the school fence to kids because they thought kids would starve because the idea of them eating vegetables was so like they
It's
just knew the
horrifying.
kids would the kids just wouldn't do it. So they would pass fast food through the school fences to their kids,
Oh wow.
and it kind of made me feel embarrassed actually that that's how bad things are, that you have to like shove french fries and hamburgers just so your child will eat. Whereas I don't know if it was in the after show of last week, but you mentioned the guy Tim called Johan who visited Japan, and he was
Right,
shocked because I went back and rewatched the episode after we talked
right,
last
right,
week, and
right. I love that
Japanese
episode.
kids saying my favorite food is broccoli, or my favorite food is tomato, or my favorite food is white rice, and just being stunned that
Or
Japanese kids,
Nori. Nori was
yeah,
another one, I think. Yeah,
seaweed, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that was
yeah.
the other one,
No, I
yeah,
like seaweed. And then he
yeah.
says, "Are they trolling me?"
Because it is a shock because my mum and my brother are teachers in England still now,
Yes.
and it's quite common in England that a lot of people bring packed lunches, and I think in Japanese middle schools and up it's quite common now as well. But when I asked my mum and my brother like what kind of foods are they bringing nowadays, because when I was a kid, my mum used to pack like a sandwich, a piece of fruit, some
A
grains
Twinkie.
and nuts.
I had a
Yeah,
Twinkie.
oh, because that's what she said. Like they're bringing like chocolate bars, cold
Right.
pizza,
Yes.
McDonald's Happy Meals just shoved into a lunchbox,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's a little bit scary for what the future might look like. If I'm
Yeah.
honest, there's a lot
I
of
agree.
research nowadays that shows how processed food, and in particular ultra processed food, is
Mm.
linked to a child's development, where it could lead to maybe learning difficulties or addictions from a young age. So
Not,
being in
not
my
to
school,
mention health risks later on, right?
exactly,
Yeah. Interesting.
childhood obesity, diabetes from a young age and stuff.
Yeah.
I know it's
Mm.
quite hard for parents to see that far into the future, but
Right.
as adults, we know what food does to our bodies. I know that if I
Sure.
eat bad for a week, I'm gonna get fat. It's
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's for me, it kind of made me a little bit curious as to why parents are fine to do this to their kids
Yeah.
when we know what it does to us. I understand it to some extent of raising kids is hard, but and sometimes it is easier to just put the McDonald's on
Mm.
the table and say just eat it, guys, just eat it. But at the same time, once you do that, that becomes the standard, and then it makes it so hard to break that chain.
Yeah.
So in my
Yeah.
school in particular, it's that's why we're very serious about making sure the kids not only eat healthy food and eat a variety of food, also understand why they're
Mm.
eating
Right. Right.
each
Yeah.
food. And within Japanese nurseries, there is a type of lesson that we have called shokuiku, which is just food education. And it's something that we do. Well, most schools do every month, like most public schools, Ninka Hoikuens, they have a guideline that you have to do something at least once a month. Within my school, it's a bit more regular than that, where we have the big monthly things where we might teach the kids, when you're eating, sit nicely to help digestion. Don't just slouch on the table. Try and eat your food at a good pace and chew it and stuff like that. But then we'll
Hmm.
have little things as well. Like last week, we grew mushrooms. So on Rakuten, you can get like this shiitake soil mound for like 1,200 yen. And then within a week, you have literally got like more shiitake mushrooms than you can count. So it's just good for the kids to see. And then we cut those mushrooms and that goes into their lunch.
Mhm.
Or we grow like little sprouts and we show them how fast things can grow. Japan is really good that it has a lot of picture books at home about different foods. There's a really good series called Yasai no Gakko, which has like different vegetables and fruits, and tells you why did they grow how they grow, what did they do for the body, just little things like that to really help kids understand what food is. I think is the
Yeah.
fundamental thing. It's not just something that we put in our mouth when we feel hungry or we want to enjoy that sensation of salt and sugar. It is building our life for
Yeah,
us.
Yeah.
I remember, yes, some of those books when my daughter was going to Hoikuen, and I remember that, well, some of them actually contain, or maybe all of them, they contain all the information you mentioned earlier. But not only that, the funny thing is that they are written for children, so they actually are written for kids, the age of 2, 3, 4, or 5, and so on, so that kids can understand that. But they also, so every vegetable has a name there, and it is carrot, for example, it is ninjin, but it's not just the ninjin, right? It's ninjin-san, which is Mr.
Yeah.
Ninjin, or
The
you
honorable ninjin. Yeah. Yeah.
was the honorable ninjin, which of
Yeah.
course I understand this is the cultural implication, because here everything needs to be
Animism.
honored. Yeah, the animism and everything, but also it teaches kids to respect their food from a very early
Yeah.
age. So while they learn to understand why it is good for their bodies and them, they also learn to respect what is on their plate as well, which was another culture shock for me in the good sense of the word, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just because I love the cultural wisdom that is just kind of baked into Japan, you know.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of the things that their culture has been teaching, a lot of them are being verified by science now after the fact, right? And it's funny because it's like we don't believe it until we get scientific evidence. But things like you talk about chewing your food, okay, the importance of chewing your food. And actually, I saw a Japanese show years ago about the importance of chewing your food because your brain creates histamine, and
Yeah.
histamine is an appetite suppressor. And they had evidence like they had 25 people in one group, 25 in the other. In one group, they said, "We want you to chew gum for 10 minutes," and they chewed gum for 10 minutes. And then the other group didn't, and they said, "Okay, here's ramen, all you can eat as much as you can." And the group that didn't chew gum ate twice as much ramen as the group. It was they just
Yeah.
twice as much. So I mean, just say the importance of chewing. You're talking about the basics of eating. Nobody ever taught me that. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're growing up, right? So
Yeah. The chewing the food and also the speed. of how you eat your food as well. Actually, this is a lesson I learned the hard way where I would always eat my food quite fast and then I would be hungry again in like 2 or 3 hours, whereas everybody else could wait until dinner time. But I would
Yeah.
also eat my food like 3 times. I would eat it like it was going to run away from me. So it's we have like a time limit for the smaller kids. They can eat a bit longer because they have to dig through it with a spoon. Or for the bigger kids, we say like you've got 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
What elementary schools follow as well, but you've got 30 minutes, but we don't provide like because they can have seconds. Like once they finish their lunch, they can have a bit more, but we don't give them seconds until like 20 minutes has passed because
Oh,
some
interesting.
of them have this fear that, oh, if I don't eat as fast as possible, I might not get my seconds. Like it's that kind of like
I
panic
got you.
of
Yeah, yeah,
if
yeah,
everyone else
yeah,
finishes first, they
yeah.
might eat all the seconds before
Not a
me,
whole.
and then I won't have anything. But it's like, no, 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 everyone's got. We've got enough for everybody. So don't worry about that. It's not going to disappear just because you eat slowly. We've got your portion here. So it's really important to teach them that lunch is something that you can enjoy, dinner is something that you can enjoy. And it's not necessarily nutrition related, but what I've been trying to help the parents with in my school is also how to eat lunch because unfortunately one of the other things that's happening a lot nowadays is watching TV whilst eating,
Mm-hmm.
which is quite a common family thing to do. However, it doesn't stop at watching TV while you're eating anymore. It's also when you go to a restaurant with your kids, you bang the iPad down on the table. And when you go out to eat, the kids just sit looking at a smartphone or
Yeah,
looking at an
yeah.
iPad whilst they eat their McDonald's. And I honestly feel that people might think I'm exaggerating, but I honestly feel that's really damaging for
I
kids
agree.
that
I
Yeah.
agree.
because
I
they're
agree.
not focused on what they're eating. They're
I
just
agree.
looking at the screen and just putting it in their mouth.
Yeah.
And they end up eating slowly. They don't take care of how to use their fork and spoon and chopsticks properly. It's not, and they're not in tune with what's going on around them.
Yeah.
TV is fun. I don't watch TV much myself, but there are times where watching movies or YouTube is fun. People are watching this now. Thank you very much. But
We hope you're not
it's,
eating.
but unfortunately, what a lot of parents tend to do now, again, busy from work, it's hard getting home from work and taking care of
Yeah.
everything, but get dinner made, slam on the TV, sit the kid down at the table whilst you do other stuff. And it's
Yeah.
it's really good, especially with Japan's working culture where typically work an hour longer than other
Yeah.
countries. There's a longer commuting time for many people, so an 8 to 5 shift might actually be like 7 until 6 because you've got to travel an hour each way or something like that. I can understand it, but again, it's looking at the long game with the children's growth and development. It's
Exactly.
not helping them in the way that we hope. Clearing this hurdle the easy way tomorrow is making that hurdle bigger when it comes to them actually becoming functioning, young
Right.
adults and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah,
In a sense, you're kind of outsourcing a part of your parental duties to a device.
yeah,
Yeah.
And
that's become quite common
yeah.
nowadays. And
But my parents did it with TV. It's just
yeah,
that you couldn't do it anywhere like you can now. So there were still limited time restrictions. 'Cause you had to be there to watch it, right?
yeah. And
Yeah.
I think one of the nicer things about maybe Western homes is that depending on the size of the home, sometimes there is a dining room where the table might be in a separate place, which might cut the view of the TV.
Right,
Whereas
right, right.
Japan is usually an LDK format
Yeah,
where the living and the dining is together.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see the TV. And yeah, as you said, Tim, like now we have the TV everywhere.
Yeah.
When,
Portable
whether
TVs. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
because there's an Eon Mall. Well, everywhere there's Eon malls everywhere, but there's a Neon Mall just down the street from me, and they have a lot of food choices, really good food choices. But more and more people are choosing McDonald's, and not only are they choosing McDonald's, they're choosing McDonald's, and they are sat down watching an iPad while they're eating McDonald's.
In
I like
Japan? In Japan?
in Japan, yeah, and I
Oh.
think it's due to both parents becoming busier and
Mm.
working full-time jobs that this kind of exhaustion for the childcare is
Right.
starting to creep in, which is why in my school we try to teach parents a little bit more and kind of instill in the kids like this is how we should eat. Let's take this. Let's take how we eat everywhere, not just in school.
You
Right.
know, that's interesting because I think the food courts are so convenient. In some ways, they're more convenient than McDonald's for me because I'm walking through a station and there's, Shinagawa, you go there and there's delicious food all around you. It's hard to get out of there without buying something, right? Um, so I never thought of McDonald's as more convenient, although maybe the kids have got used to the Happy Meal or whatever. Interesting.
So that's what I was going to say. McDonald's has that one key factor, which is the toys. They
Right.
have
Yeah.
the toys and the French fries. So I think that's definitely the thing that kind of ups. A lot of kids, they still love udon. They still love their donbudis and stuff like that. But it's
Mm.
very difficult because I know America's kind of having a discussion right now because there's that YouTuber Mr. Beast who's just created his own Lunchables competitor. And there's
Right.
the
Yeah.
ethics of you're just trying to sell bad food to kids.
Yeah.
But, McDonald's has that constant cycle of Happy Meal toys where last
Yeah.
month it was Chikawa, now it's Hello Kitty, in a couple of weeks it's that Precua,
Gotcha.
that girl TV show. There's that constant cycling Mario toys of drawing those kids in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Just a quick tidbit. I knew an executive at McDonald's Japan, but it was back like in 2000, I don't know, 4 or 5. And he said that McDonald's biggest competitor at the time was cell phones, devices.
Mm.
In other words, it was taking away their business with the youngsters because they only had so much disposable income and they were putting it toward their devices. And so they had to cut back on their McDonald's consumption. Like I would have never thought they looked at it as a competitor almost.
Yeah.
Interesting, right? So
Yeah.
that's why I was interested in
Yeah.
hearing
Well,
the trend.
you see a lot of junior high school kids just going to McDonald's nowadays and just buying a drink or buying a small fry. So I can kind of see how that would be, yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
It is interesting.
So
Maybe one thing
I was just gonna say, I love that you guys are growing stuff. So great. Hats off to you guys. Sorry about that, Mai. Go ahead.
Oh, no, what I wanted, it's actually what you just mentioned, Tim, about growing stuff, because I gather that it is part of the education nowadays. So you grow stuff, and depending, of course, on the kindergarten, some kindergartens don't have a yard or a garden, some do, but always they actually, try to show how things come into being, right? And I remember actually when I was also, there was the autumn festival, I think, in my daughter's Hoikuen, and then we went there. They had a tiny, tiny patch, where they grew, two plants, tomato plants, and two what eggplants, and also two stalks of okra, and that was all they had. But it was so interesting because the kids, they were so proud to show to their parents, look what we grew. It's, and there were actually some of the vegetables were already there on the plants. So it was very nice to see that, because I can say that, for example, at home, my husband, he grew up without knowing much about plants and vegetables, and anything. So, and I would say that part of it is because he didn't, for the first 3 years, he didn't go, to Koikuen or a nursery school. They started later after the age of 3. And even though he said that, yeah, they grew some, some of those plants in pots, he was never ever actually interested in doing that. And I wonder whether you have any observations, Jake. So if you start kids earlier, teaching them about these things earlier, is it easier to interest them and to maintain their interest in what you teach them?
Yeah, I think I think for many things, the earlier you get them started and to just get them used to it, it kind
Yeah.
of becomes a long life thing because even small kids, like very small kids, they can partake in the process. Like when my daughter was a baby, we had a small patch in our garden, similar tomatoes, eggplants, green peppers and stuff like that. And we've got a lot of little pictures of her in her rain boots, just walking around the garden, watering everything. And yeah, I think anything with life, I think whether it be with animals, plants, reading books, and unfortunately that does go for TV and stuff like that. If you build that habit and that thing from a baby, that will stick with them for a long time. Yeah,
They're so receptive to everything at that age,
yeah,
so it just becomes natural, almost second nature.
Mhm.
And there's just maybe Maya, you can come up with who this person is, but there's someone in
Yeah,
my network. I think they're in yours. He might be from Australia, and he does organic growing. Like he does a lot of. He goes to schools and he helps set up rooftop. If
that's
anybody,
Paul.
you
Paul
know,
Biddy. Yeah, Paul.
what's his name again?
Paul Biddy, I think, or Betty.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. Is it Paul Beatty? There's someone else too. It might be him too. 828. Let me
Okay.
get that. Yeah. So anyway, I got to come up with the name. But if anybody listening knows what I'm talking about, but Paul Beatty too, I think he does stuff like that. Yeah. Right
Right.
on.
All right, right on. And just give me a second to shout out once again, this time to our other sponsor, House Inc. and Hana Urushisawa Howell. So, Hana and House Inc. are based in Yokohama, and they offer once again bilingual services in Japanese and in English, in custom home design, construction, and renovation, plus commercial building construction. So, in order to benefit from their bilingual customized services, please contact Hana Urushisawa Howell on LinkedIn, or you can also find the contact details in the description of the video on YouTube. You are never going to regret it. So, if you have a project on your mind, just reach out to Hana.
She'll take care of you. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
right. Yes. Yes. So, Tim, yes, because you mentioned, I think that's Paul Betty, but there
No,
probably
it
are
is. There's another person too I had in mind, but
person.
I can't remember. I'm old. I forget names. But if I see him, somewhere on my network, I'll know who he is, and
Yeah.
I'll let you guys know. Just an
Uh,
interesting guy. Yeah.
mhm. What I wanted to do though is to read out two comments from Joe Hug, Dr. Joe Hug.
Yeah.
He shared
Thanks,
them.
Joe.
Thank you, Joe. And Deborah, thank you very much too for watching. So the first one from Joe is, if I recall, I remember seeing a scene in the 1983 film The Family Game, Kazoku Game, about a family that would not speak and speed it at the table until the local high school teacher came into the family's lives and changed the way they all communicated and even how they ate and enjoyed their food at the table. So, have you watched this film, or I haven't? I
I did
apologize.
not. I did not. Yeah. Oh, interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I was not able to speak when the film was released, but I've not heard of it. No.
Right. Yeah. And the second comment from Dr. Hug is, this conversation reminds me of the 2010 Frontline documentary, Digital Nation, about the changing manners of children at the table using
Yeah.
iPads, phones, etc. If you go to YouTube and watch it, it seems so long ago until you
Yeah.
realize it was not so long ago that
Quite
children were
depressing.
already plastered to their electronic
Yeah.
devices.
But
Yeah.
there wasn't that much research at that time, but now there is. You know what I mean? Same with we were talking about processed foods. We all know now that they're damaging. But when I was growing up, they didn't know that. And my mom had 7 kids, and so processed food is what we ate, and no one knew. No one
No.
knew,
Yeah.
No.
you know?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
I can kind of forgive them, but we're supposed to be evolving now. And maybe the culture will catch up to the research. Maybe we're
Yeah.
moving in that direction.
Yeah, this is probably a conversation for another day, but
Yeah.
there was some research that came out recently about the YouTube channel Cocomelon, the one that's kind of targeted for kids constantly playing kids songs. That apparently kids who watch more than 2 hours of Cocomelon a day apparently develop 7 times more likely to have ADHD tendencies and stuff like that. And that's become a big one for parents as well to distract them whilst they do other stuff.
Yeah. You know what, Tim, to what you said, and Jake, what you said just now as well. I think that in the beginning, before we know how things work and their impact on human health and child's development, so there is no way to actually limit that in the beginning because we don't know that the
Right.
impact. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's the same with um, processed foods, and now it's with electronic devices. We're just now
Yeah.
starting to understand how those devices impact people. My point is that in the beginning, we cannot blame people for allowing their kids to
No.
eat processed
No.
food,
No. We can't. We
electronic
can't.
devices. But now, for example, we have no excuse to keep feeding our kids processed food, right? Because the research is out there and we already know what it does to human
Right.
health. I think that in maybe very, very short time, we'll know the same, more or less, about the impact of electronic devices as well.
Yeah.
And then we will not have any excuses, to keep allowing our kids to use them for more than maybe an hour or 2 hours a day. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know Chamath? He's a billionaire. One of those. He's one of those tech bro billionaires. He helped start Facebook, and he left. And he found the reason he left was he found it so damaging. And his child, he told this story, had ADHD. He took away her device. He goes, and he just started engaging with her. And he goes, 4 months later, she's fine. Took
mhm.
her like 4 months. And he said she didn't need drugs for her ADHD. She needed her device taken away. Now, that's
Right.
anecdotal. I'm not saying it applies to everybody, but I thought
Mhm.
that was kind of an interesting anecdote.
Yeah, during COVID as well, there was I saw a report that there was a huge increase in reported ADHD and autism cases during COVID when everyone was trapped at home or was on that. Again, it's we don't know how true that is, but it's just kind of like an interesting observation to make. But building habits and stuff, I just wanted to talk about my school's lunches a little bit
Excellent.
more and
Yes.
why I think it's very important to really ingrain this in the kids in the school because I we have a slide prepared about different lunches that we make in the school. Oh, that was fast. That was
I
very
love
fast.
that. You're a
So these
step
are just
ahead.
a few examples of the kids' lunches that we have in the school. And well, this is an adult portion of this is my portion of the lunches that the kids have in school. But I think one of the immediate things that is very easy to notice is color, which I
Oh,
think a lot of food kind of nowadays lacks.
yeah.
Almost everything features
Mm.
4 or 5 colors of food. Of course, there's the white
Interesting.
rice, there's the greens from the vegetables, the oranges, the yellows, the brown from the meat, the miso soup, the kind
No.
of that dark yellow tint. It's very colorful because
Yeah.
if you go to a lot of places nowadays, which is mostly processed. It's like it's brown or it's white or it's beige. There's not a lot of stuff going on. So I
Right.
think one of the most important things is to have color in your food. It makes it more appealing to look at. It makes it, especially on the bottom right, that's our child's version of bibimbap, a Korean dish.
Mm.
It's very colorful. It looks nice. Of course, there's vegetables in it, but when you look at it like a glance, it doesn't look like vegetables. For me, at least, anyway. I'm sure people who don't like vegetables so much might be a little bit adverse to it. But then even little things like there's a few fish dishes in there. Of course, Japan does love fish a lot more than, for example, I do in England. Despite fish and chips being the national dish, I really was not
Right.
a fish person unless it was fried. Unless it was fried. But the top left, there's quite a common fish, which is saba, mackerel, which
Mhm.
is a more meaty, oily fish, which kind of
Yeah,
has a bit of a texture of meat, but it's got the fish in there. And then the middle
yeah.
one, the top middle, is a white fish, but it's got lots of like pickled red and yellow peppers on top, um, which it
Uh,
kind of really gives a nice balance to the fish
Yeah.
as well.
Mm.
So this is,
right.
yeah, as I said,
Good.
it's one of the most exciting parts of the job to come up with these lunches, trying new combinations. Some lunches don't go down as well, unfortunately, and that's when we make some fine tuning to the menu. But we each day has its calorie count, as I mentioned before. It's protein, it's sugar, it's fat, it's salt content, and it's just one of the things that I really enjoy about every day, knowing that kids get to eat food like this. Because even if they do go home in the evening and they do have their McDonald's, or if they do have their pre-packed pasta or something, at least we know in school they
Mm.
are
Right,
getting their
right.
vegetables, they are getting their carbohydrates, they are getting their proteins, they are getting their variety. Because a
Uh-huh.
lot of the parents, they ask me like they don't eat vegetables at home, and I talk to them about, well, I know they can because they do in school.
They do
They
here,
they
yeah.
do eat in school. I remember when during COVID, we, instead of inviting the parents into school, we did it all by Zoom. And I still remember the reaction on one of the parents. She was like red in the face with anger because her daughter was eating broccoli like it was no problem. And I could see her say, "You never eat broccoli at home. You never touch that at home. You never do that at
That's
home." And
hilarious.
I could see her in the face, but it was a nice way to show the parents that they can do it. They
Can be
and
done.
one of the nice things in school is the friends all eat together. They eat
Mm.
together with the teacher. We create, 11:30 is lunchtime. It doesn't change. It's not
Yeah.
12 o'clock one day. It's not 11:15 one day. It's like, okay, 11:20, let's start washing our hands. For the small kids, let's change diapers and let's get ready for lunch. We really create that scene
Mm.
of lunchtime.
The habit.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
So
it's they
every week is your menu different? Every single week
every
you have a different.
every day is different. Every day of the month is different. Yeah,
Mm.
Wow. That's a lot of
yeah.
work.
That's a lot
It
of.
is a lot. Uh, Yeah, and that's why in a lot of schools now they have the Aoshi, which is the nutritionist, who
Mhm.
specializes in
Right.
menu planning. So
Yeah.
they've gone to school for that, and they
That's their
know what
job.
kind of
Gotcha.
works well. And then there's the Chodishi, who is kind of like the dietitian of, okay, they're more involved in the cooking and the seasoning and preparing it. So there's two different roles in Japanese nursery kitchens, of the nutritionist and then the cook. So they really have the skills they need to put this together every day. And a lot of hoikuens now are kind of in groups like companies, so they
Mhm.
can all share ideas and share plans and stuff like that, and get ideas from each other.
I
It
have
would,
a
it would be. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry. So my question is, do you let the kids in the kitchen sometimes to watch how the food is prepared, or sometimes even help whenever possible, of course, because I mean, I
Hmm.
cannot imagine you allowing them to use knives and so on, but do you do that?
So
From
the way in my school the kitchen is prepared, the kitchen is laid out, is that there is like a viewing space. So
okay.
they cannot go into the kitchen just
Mhm.
because we don't want anything to spread or like
Gotcha.
to get
Yeah.
unhygienic. But
Sure.
we do have a place to view what's happening in the
Mhm.
kitchen. So they
Yeah.
can see things being cooked and chopped. And then part of our food education curriculum, there are things throughout the year where they do get to make stuff themselves. So, like for example, we just had the mushrooms. So when the mushrooms grew, they could help harvest them, cut them off the mound. I'm not even quite sure what it's called. The clump of soil that mushrooms grow out of. So they're able to cut those. You know, making onigiris is very easy to just put some gloves on and help them pack those together.
Mm.
And then we'll also give chances for the kids to choose what they want for lunch as well. So there'll be a couple of times throughout the year where we just ask, okay, what do you guys want to eat on this day? Like they always say like fried chicken and like French fries, but it's like okay, like fried
Because
chicken
they
can be
want.
done in a nice
Yeah.
healthy way where it can be oven baked instead of fried, and it
Right.
it tastes almost the same really.
Yeah.
And then French fries, instead of deep frying like pre-processed potatoes, we can slice the potatoes and oven bake them. So you
Right.
Yeah.
can make
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
a bit healthier,
Sure. 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 Sure.
and kids never notice really. It's we always have fries at home which are cut, boiled, and then oven baked, and my daughter doesn't treat them any differently than a French fry from McDonald's.
Oh,
It's
good.
they just
Yeah.
get into their head that it's a French fry. It's a
Right.
Right.
French fry.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
That's
So you can
great.
go, and then you can trick them with sweet potato French fries as well after that. You can be like, it is a French fry. It's got a
Yeah. Yeah.
potato in
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Sweet potatoes are good too. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
I just a quick. Oh, is that okay? I can wait.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
No, just it's a little
Go
bit
ahead.
different. So I don't know, Tim. I don't want to take away this time, of you asking. But one thing that I really remember, and it made a lot of sense to me actually back then. At first it didn't, and then it did. Was that so when you get, to change the food of your child, around the age of 6 months old, right, and then between 6 and 12 months, so you actually have to go from liquid food to hard food. And then, of course, for many mothers, I was one of them, of course, it was a kind of difficult to go through because I was always worried that my daughter wouldn't really want to chew the vegetables, and once she saw
Mm.
the vegetables, she might not want to eat them, and so on and so on. But she started going to Hoikuen when she was actually 7 months old, right? Because of whatever, there were rules and so on and so on. And
Mm.
there, the teachers actually told me that I should start giving her, small chunks of vegetables and small chunks of food, so that the child would actually get used to the idea that food should be chewed, right?
Yeah.
And then, so it was a very scary transition to me, but that's what they did for them, for all the
Yeah.
kids there. So I just wanted to chime in and say, how it really starts from a very early age here. So
Yeah.
how, yeah,
You've unlocked like a very like unfortunately this podcast is only 1 hour because the whole Japanese ninushoku, the baby food, is actually one of my favorite things. And unfortunately there's only 15 minutes left because I think I could talk another hour
Well, we
on
could we
this.
could get you back on, so no problem with that.
we'll be
No
No,
very
that
problem.
happy
is
to have you.
no.
Yes.
When my to be honest, my wife is not much of a cook, and I don't mind because I love cooking. And when my daughter was 5 months old, that was one of my favorite things about raising a kid. Of On Saturdays, getting all the vegetables, pureeing the carrots, mashing up the corn, and then freezing them. Because in Japan, they freeze things in ice cube trays, right,
Sure.
for their
Right.
baby food. And that was one of my favorite things because even from, as you mentioned, 7 months, 6 months, they do get used to eating vegetables as well. And babies will eat almost everything.
Yeah.
So it's one of those really key points of getting started. Of they start with rice, they move on to like carrots, and my daughter was eating like at 10 months old, she was eating like pureed natto, she was eating like eggplant, mashed up green peppers, like all of this variety of stuff. And
Niboshi. Yeah.
the first time she did eat a lemon, when that was we still got a video of it. It was such a to see the reaction to sour food where she kind of just started like flapping her arms around. But it is one of the, as you mentioned, it is so essential to get them started very early,
Yeah.
not just for the taste of the vegetables, but the chewing and the mashing up of the
Right.
food. Because
Right.
I asked my brother to send me some baby food from England, and I tried one and I just threw it all away because it was so bland, it was so flavorless, it was like a weird stodgy paste. They were making
Processed
like,
food.
yeah, like it was like meat sauce pasta baby food, and it's like, just give them some vegetables. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
blended up pizza. It can
Yeah.
be
Right.
like proper.
Yeah.
It can be like proper food. It doesn't have to be. And
Cool.
when you prepare it on the weekend and put it all in these ice cube trays and then heat it up, it doesn't
Yeah.
take time as well.
Gosh
Right.
darn it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really.
Oh,
Well,
that's
but
great.
yeah, Tim, I'm sorry I really interrupted you, and
No,
please.
no, no, that's okay. In fact, how about just let's let Jake go through his material if you got, and then if we have time at the end, I'll mention it. It's just kind of a random comment. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Jake.
So as for materials, that was the only slide. But yeah, helping the parents. I think, as what Maya mentioned about her being worried about chewing the food, I
Mm,
Yeah.
think what a lot of parents maybe have is maybe this worry that something will go wrong. We talked
Right.
about it last week. I'm not sure if it was in the podcast or after, but the worry about like co-sleeping, like where a lot of people don't co-sleep because they worry they're going to crush their kids, when
yeah.
actually it almost never happens. And I
Right.
think a lot of parents have this fear that
Almost.
if I give them some vegetables, they won't eat it, and then they're going to go hungry, and they're going to be sick, and they're going to starve.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not that's not going to happen. And even if your child was hungry a little bit, then maybe that's when we talk about, okay, we need to eat these vegetables, but would you like it prepared in a different way? It's like it has to be like teamwork between the parent and the kids.
Mm,
And I think maybe this is where kind of like modern parenting, especially maybe kids being born now and especially after COVID, is that I think parenting is being seen as something that you've got to get through until the kid gets older, rather
Rather
than
than a
being something that
profession.
you
Yeah.
enjoy, rather than something that you enjoy and take part in,
mm.
like leaving things to TV, leaving things to Coco Melon, playing video games from a young age, which I love video games myself, but there's a time and a place. There should be a limit. The food that they eat, now we can just order food to our house any time of day. We can pick up McDonald's anytime. Some Japanese fast food is good. Like it's not as healthy as it could be, but it's not all processed. At least with things like Matsuya, Skia, at least it's just rice and meat and
Right.
onions.
You can
Yeah,
see
so
what is in the bowl in front of you,
yeah,
right?
you can
Yeah.
see the food, what the food was supposed to be. Um,
Mm,
and
Yeah.
it's just like I think parenting is hard, raising kids is hard, teachers' jobs are very hard. But I think we've got to remember that it's a lifelong result of the work. It's
mm,
not just you do this difficult job and then that's it, it's done. you do this difficult job for a number of years, and then you see these amazing results of your work forever, which then they pass on to other people. And they're successful in their life. They have their own kids and can replicate that. I think it's something that is tough, and I can really understand why it's easy to choose those options. But getting into those routines, like my daughter does not like being dragged out every day after school to walk the dogs. But then she's also like she's really hungry when she gets home, and she will eat like everything, like all the vegetables, and then she'll study. She's like, I don't want to study today. But then she'll be in the supermarket and she can already calculate the price of the food that we're going to buy.
Right.
Or I can ask her, I'll just give her the money and say, oh, could you just go buy this for me in the supermarket? It's just those little things that have these positive results that
Mhm.
require, it also requires like mentally restraining your, like, after a hard day of work, you just like, I hate everyone, I hate everything, but I love you guys, I love you kids. Like,
Yeah.
it's tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, because of that, I think that people in general, adults in general, are becoming less patient. And as you
Mm,
said, you actually have to be very, very patient, because when you're patient, you can have that dedication too. And at the end of the day, I think that it's about developing habits of
yeah.
taking care of your child, right? Because in the beginning, it's tough, like when you think you go home from work and you think, oh wow, now I have to cook food, for two different kinds of food, one, for the baby and one for the adults in the family, and so on. But then this is a habit, and when you think that, you develop that habit, eventually you start thinking about what, could be good for the adults too. And sometimes I remember also that the realization that the same food that adults eat could be cooked for the baby with a little bit less spice, it
Right.
makes your
Right.
life so much easier. But it's once again that patience, that dedication, and also the habit development at the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but
Yeah, I think that adjustment, yeah, like a bolognese, just scoop out some of the meat into a smaller pan, maybe add a bit of ketchup instead of like spices you would use. If you're making a curry, just scoop out a little bit before you add the chilies and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
That's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
right.
you
Exactly.
can really
Exactly.
adjust these things. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah,
It's
it's not
efficient. Yeah.
efficient.
Yeah.
Eventually, when you start doing it, it becomes less scary, because
Yeah.
when we
Yeah.
only think of it before we start doing that and get into the habit of doing that, of course.
And then you
Uh,
don't dread it anymore. It's just part of your. It's almost like we're brainwashing the kids into eating healthy, into creating healthy. They don't even know it because they're just. It's that's how things are for them.
yeah.
So I just want to, Jake. Whenever I listen to you, it really explains why I'm very high on Japanese young education. I think they do a lot of things right at very young ages. There are critiques about higher Japanese education, and there has its limits
Mm,
of limited maybe freedom of thought, and they're valid. But in terms of preschool and the younger grades, I just listening to you, I realize how lucky we are in Japan
yeah.
to enjoy the fruits of this, this
Mm.
great system, which has a lot of the culture infused into it. And I really
Yeah.
appreciate the culture. I appreciate you coming on and sharing
Thank
that
you. Yeah.
information.
And
Yeah.
I hope people who do come to Japan have that open mind of, because I think it's very easy to come to a different country and just assume that everything that the country does is wrong and
Right.
everything that your country did was right. I think that's one of the kind of dangerous
Yeah.
mindsets that a lot of people coming to Japan have. Like,
Mhm.
just everything my country did was better and everything here sucks
Yeah.
because they don't understand it yet. Like
Right.
because we had the slide with all the lunch, all the different lunches, and I remember when I used to use Twitter before I realized how mentally draining and horrible that place is.
Toxic. Yeah.
Yeah, I once put a picture of my lunch on Twitter from my school, and I just remember getting a couple of comments from Westerners saying, "Oh, that looks disgusting. My kids would never eat that." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And it's like, "It's got like green peppers and onions in it." It's like, "Yeah, vegetables. Yeah,
Very-
they're good for you. Yeah, you're supposed to eat them. They grew on this world for us to eat. Like what did you eat in school?" And it's like,
Yeah.
we eat like, we eat like toast and French fries and sausages, and it's like, well, those things are nice, but I mean, it's not gonna help you grow and develop.
Mm, yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
Well, but thank you very much for bringing that point, because I think that the less people understand, the more entitled they feel, and
mm,
entitled to say that what their country does is much much better. Well, it is not true. I mean, nothing is just black and white, and in every system, every culture, every education too, there are
mm,
good and bad things,
mm.
limitations, and so advantages, disadvantages, and so. And I think
I've
that
got a I've got a quick controversial anecdote based
yes,
on what we talked about there. Of I like fax machines because last I took a week off last week. Well, my daughter was sick, so I was off work, and I needed to arrange the health checks for my staff at the local hospital. We in Japan we have to do a yearly Kenko Shindan, a yearly health check, which
mm-hmm.
also is a really amazing thing that we have. It is a yearly tradition. If I get told I'm too fat, but at the same time, it's good to have that health check. But I couldn't access my school computer, my email, or anything because I wasn't at work. And I could just call the hospital and say, "I'm sorry, I'm at home today. Could you fax the schedule for the health checks to my school?" And the nurse can just pick it up out the printer, and it was all done
Yeah,
easy. And
Yeah.
I like fax
Yeah.
machines.
yes,
You should put that on your gravestone. He
Yeah.
liked fax machines.
That's the next podcast. Yeah, all about
yeah.
machines in Japan. Yeah,
I
Oh,
think
you've been in Japan too long.
yeah.
No,
now
but I understand. I agree with you. Yeah.
I
Mm.
think that we should have at least two other podcasts with you, Jay. And then the
Oh,
first one is
for
about the
sure.
renew shoku, and then the second one
Mm.
is about controversial anecdotes. Because honestly, I never understood why foreigners get so wired up about fax machines in Japan.
Yeah,
Mm.
So, right?
right.
So, because fax machines, if it works for a company, if that method of communication works for a company, then so be it,
Yeah.
right?
I think there's a place for it, and it's maybe more narrow than Japan has been using it. But there
Hmm.
is a place for fax machines. But there are some times where they are inefficient. It just depends on the situation. But
Sure.
yeah,
But
I think they just like to hold stuff in their hands too. I think
yeah,
they like
but
to have a physical thing in their hands as part of
true.
it.
But Tim, think about the emails, and sorry, I mean,
No, I
like
agree. Yeah,
open
we're running late here.
vector, of a conversation. But even with emails, you can easily get your whole system, infected with the virus. And
It'll
what?
crash. Yeah. Or the cloud gets hacked. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyway, I'm sorry for going, on a
Another tangent, but we do tangents. Sorry about that, Jake. But I really
No
enjoyed it.
worries.
I agree. We got to have you back on.
yes,
And I learned a lot. Thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us today.
yes. And to everybody who watched us, maybe not from the
Thank
beginning,
you.
Jake is the principal of the Milky Way International Preschool in uh, Funabashi. Sorry, I just lost it for the moment. In Funabashi,
My
in Chiba.
school is in Ichikawa, but I live in Funabashi.
Ichikawa.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
So the school is in Ichikawa. But if
Okay.
you ever have questions, if you live in Chiba, Funabashi, Ichikawa, or even in Tokyo, please reach out to Jake. Connect with him on LinkedIn so that, well, he can answer your questions, maybe give you advice. And of course, please watch our podcasts with him. This one, the one which we had with Jake 2 weeks ago. Hopefully, we'll have others coming soon as well. So, thank you very much, Jake, really, for all the insights and the information and the knowledge about, nutrition in Japanese preschools and nurseries.
Thank you. And remember, eat your vegetables.
Eat your
Right.
veggies. I agree. And chew your food. Don't bolt your food, right? So,
Yes.
so
Well,
anyway, yeah, thank you. And I know you got to do our sponsor, right?
yes,
Close.
yes, very much so. So, once again, a very big thank you and a great, great, gratitude, of course, to Kanagawa Chuo Jutaku or Kanachu.com and James Howell and House Inc. Hanako, Hana Uroshizawa Howell. Please, if you have a project in the field of real estate, reach out to them and enjoy their services. Thank you very
Yeah.
much for staying with us. We'll be here once again on Sunday, Wednesday, and we'll continue. Thanks a lot. Have a great
Thank
day.
you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jake.
No problem.